So then earlier we get some footage of Sean Mooney talking to Jake Roberts. Roberts says that Jack Tunney won't allow him to bring his pet to the ring. So we've got no snake with Jake Roberts today, which is lovely. Then we see footage of Taker's hand being stuck in a coffin and Roberts DDTing Paul Bearer, and then Roberts hitting Taker with a steel chair, and Roberts then cutting a little bit of a promo. I didn't get much of what he said, but I did think to myself, my goodness, Jake Roberts is an amazing heel.
Yeah, and I just remember the anguish, going through the anguish of watching this segment on the video of WrestleMania 8 with the Undertaker's hand being stuck in the coffin and not being able to pull it out and just being like, no, not Paul, don't hit Paul with the DDT. Oh, he's hitting with the DDT. Oh no. Yeah, what guy Jake Roberts is. Oh, Jake, oh my God, this promo as well with Sean Mooney. Sweat. My goodness, the amount he's sweating is outrageous.
It is a great shame that Jake Roberts' heel run in WWE didn't last very long based on this evidence, because, as I say, I thought he was just tremendous, and we didn't see an awful lot of him, but I thought he was tremendous.
So sinister.
So then we get the next match is the Undertaker versus Jake the Snake Roberts, a 6.5 minute match, which ends when Taker grabs Jake, tombstones him outside of the ring, then rolls him in and gets the pin. Matt, what did you make of this one?
This was fascinating to watch, this is, but particularly having now seen allegedly the Undertaker's final wrestling match. Say allegedly because hell, you never know. But yeah, to be able to see him from this early to all the way through, that this was really interesting. His entrance still does hold up as something quite cool, to be honest. So that was a good start. And like you said earlier, the first couple of matches is pretty much just the showcase of guys for the future. We definitely know how the Undertaker's future ended up in WWE, but they certainly give it a damn good go here. I don't want to say it was a squash match, because it definitely wasn't a squash, but it was close to one in the sense of, they gave Undertaker a lot. Jake did a lot for him. The tombstone, it's one of those that even by the standard of back then, I'm amazed that it's a move that they even use, because it still, to me, looks pretty devastating. So it was a great little move for them to use. Glad they did it. Take one with his finish. Can't ask for more than that. Absolutely fantastic. What a great start for the Undertaker and for his run. What will become his run, basically.
That's funny, because I've got one word for this match, and it's boring. This is Undertaker in his slow, plodding, methodical, boring phase, I'll say, which went on for quite a while. Now he still does come off the ropes quite nicely at times in this, which is, for a man of his size, is always impressive, but it is quite dull. The thing that I did really like is how much the commentary team in particular, but also they did it in the match as well, put over the DDT as being an absolute. It's the only thing that gets the Undertaker down in the entire match is when he hits him with the DDT. Obviously, he then sits up from it, but it was still pretty cool. I did quite like the fact that he being the Undertaker tombstones Jake Roberts outside of the ring and then rolls him in and pins him, because you don't, again, like without wanting to be again that old guy yelling at the clouds, it's that kind of thing that you don't. Now there'd be a kick out after that, whereas there's nowhere there should be, because as you said, Matt, the tombstone was such a devastating finish that by doing it outside on the inverted commas concrete rather than on the ring should mean that someone's knocked out for longer than they would be. Therefore, it's easier to get a pin on them. So yeah, it wasn't great, but there was a couple of elements to it that I did appreciate anyway.
Well, I was going to say, I do love how they do the old, they did it on the concrete floor. But yes, there was a mat there.
Yeah.
And we can see that there's a mat there. So he didn't do it on the concrete, did he?
That was one of the things that I loved when Jim Ross kind of started getting involved, because he would be like, yeah, there are pads there, but they offer no protection. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that makes a bit more sense. It's not just like someone being like, it'd be like me being like, oh, I'm sat on a spike right now. And like, no, you're not, you're sat on a chair. It's absolutely fine. The padding really is there.
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it too much. I thought this was okay. I mean, look, it was 6.5 minutes. I mean, what's not to like? I mean, it didn't last too long. I think that this is another significant victory for The Undertaker. They've now decided that after this point, he becomes effectively the main upper mid-card guy that would have babyface fights against, monsters, basically, monster of the week each time, Kamala, Giant Gonzalez, and so on and so forth. And obviously Shawn Michaels has just beaten Tito Santana, and from this point on, Shawn Michaels would become a contender for the Intercontinental title and whatnot. Bret obviously would win the WWF title later in the year.
Yes!
So this is all these three guys are being elevated in this moment, in this show, and this is the Undertaker's moment. He's already beaten Snuka at WrestleMania, and he then beats Jake Roberts here. Now, I was thinking about this a little bit, because there's another big talking point of this show, which I think is worth bringing up here. And we've discussed it before. We discussed it on the Rumble 92 episode, and I think we also discussed it on the SummerSlam 91 episode, which is the alternatives that could have been at this show, WrestleMania 8.
I thought about this, yeah.
Because there's so much that could have been different. Starting, of course, with Hulk Hogan versus Flair, which was surely the original plan for WrestleMania 8. In fact, we're pretty certain it was. The reported reason they didn't go with it is that they didn't do well on the house show circuit, Hogan and Flair. The figures that they brought in just weren't as impressive as they were looking for.
That can't, I don't know. I think part of me thinks that can't be down to a lack of interest. It must be some extenuating circumstances behind that.
Well, I think it's just in line with what was happening overall to the company. The company was actually in decline. And I think when you look at the pay-per-view buy rate for this, so this is the lowest pay-per-view buys for a WrestleMania since WrestleMania 2, and WrestleMania 2 would have been for a reduced pay-per-view audience at the time, so with less people with pay-per-view. It's actually got a lower buy rate than the next two WrestleManias as well, WrestleMania 8, which is not something I hadn't realised. It's got less buys than those two. It's not a successful pay-per-view. This is one of the least successful WrestleManias of all time, WrestleMania 8. So it already suggests that the company are in decline, and that it kind of puts a little bit of a twist on the idea as well that the real decline came when Bret and Shawn and The Undertaker were the stars, when actually the truth was the decline had already come. Hogan's time had run, and that was quite clear from this. Now, that wasn't the only reason this was a low buy rate. Let's not forget that you'd had the ring boy scandal that had happened in, I think, 1990. Got in 1991 the whole negative publicity that WWF got from the Hogan Sergeant Slaughter stuff and the Iraq War cash-in. Then we've got the fact that the steroid scandal is now starting to come into viewpoint in 92. Hogan wants out as a consequence. Also, Hogan's trying to stay whiter than white, so you notice his body is a little bit less muscular during the show.
Definitely, I noticed that.
And again, that's due to the fact that he's coming off the steroids so as to avoid any of the fallout of this whole scandal. So all that's going on, plus that peak period had run its course. If you were a fan in 1987, say you were 11 years old, let's say in 1987, massively into it, by this point you were 16, you were probably not watching anymore. As crazy as it sounds from three guys who are in their 30s, some of who are very close to being 40 in the next couple of years, saying that most people don't get past their sort of certainly 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old self carrying on watching wrestling. It doesn't happen in a lot of cases. Maybe it's happening more and more as time goes on, but certainly the people that me and Tom would have gone to school with at the time would have been losing interest at specific ages. So all those things were amounting to the fact that WWF general business was in trouble. So I think that's why Hogan and Flair suffered on the house show circuit, and I don't think it would have done any worse than the pay-per-view buys that this one got. So that could and probably would have been the main event. Now, there was a certain point, we discussed this on the SummerSlam 91 episode, that we predicted or guessed that maybe Savage wouldn't have come out of retirement as early as he did after his WrestleMania 7 loss, had it not been for the fact that the Warrior was sacked by WWF straight after SummerSlam 91. Had that not happened, it's likely that Savage wouldn't have come out of retirement, because Warrior's program was due to be with Jake Roberts. But having had that happen, they then transitioned Roberts to a feud with Savage, which seemed obviously to be something that should have culminated at this show. So it should have probably been Savage and Roberts. Should have probably been Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, but Jannetty equally, I think, had got sacked by the company for being an idiot, and he'd get that so many times. It's ridiculous. So you've got all of that going on.
Makes you think, sorry, Tinky, but say, for example, if The Undertaker then had a match, say if they did Savage versus Roberts, and The Undertaker had a match against the Berserker or Skinner,
before you go any further, this is what I was going to say. is that the Undertaker, I don't think would have turned babyface by this point had some of those things not happened. They only turned him babyface so that he could face Jake Roberts, because he had no one left for Roberts now, because Savage had to face Flair because Flair wasn't facing Hogan. So all this stuff is sliding out of place. And I think Undertaker would have faced Sid, who I don't think would have turned heel to face Hogan had they gone with Hogan Flair. And I think Undertaker would have lost. And I don't think we would have had the streak as a consequence. So that's what I was coming to, is this is a bit of a sliding doors moment. There's so many matches that are moving around here. And obviously they're not thinking about anything to do with a streak at this point. They wouldn't be thinking about that for a number of years until someone pointed out the coincidence. So it could have very much gone a different way, because I do believe that that's possible that would have happened. And I think, as I said, I think if Sid and The Undertaker are facing each other, Sid being a baby face, I don't think he'd have lost to The Undertaker.